The massive doors of the Zephyrian throne room hissed open, revealing a sight that made even the most hardened galactic diplomats hold their breath. Princess Lyrelei stood at the center of the crystalline chamber, her silver skin shimmering under the ethereal blue light that cascaded from the ceiling like liquid starlight. Her forearms moved with practiced grace as she adjusted the ceremonial armor that marked her as heir to one of the most powerful empires in the known galaxy. The human delegation entered slowly, their simple military uniforms looking almost primitive against the advanced architecture surrounding them. At their head walked Commander Marcus Chen, a weathered soldier whose scarred face told stories of countless battles across the Outer Rim territories. His brown eyes remained steady as they swept across the assembled Zephyrian court, taking in the hostile glances and whispered conversations that followed his every step. Lyrelei's vertical pupils narrowed as she studied the human leader. She had heard stories about these strange bipedal creatures from the far edge of the galaxy, tales that painted them as barbaric warmongers who solved every problem with violence. Looking at Commander Chen now, with his simple uniform and the crude projectile weapon at his side, she found those stories easy to believe. So, Lyrelei's voice rang out across the chamber, each word dripping with barely concealed contempt. These are the humans we've heard so much about. The species that thinks it can negotiate with the Zephyrian Empire using nothing but threats and primitive technology. The court erupted in soft laughter, a sound like silver bells tinkling in the wind. Several nobles leaned forward in their floating seats, eager to witness what promised to be an entertaining humiliation of the upstart human species. Commander Chen stepped forward, his boots clicking against the polished floor. "Your Highness," he said, his voice calm and respectful despite the obvious hostility surrounding him. "We come seeking an alliance between our peoples. The Devourers threaten all life in this sector and—" "Silence," Lyrelei cut him off with a gesture of her upper right hand. "You speak of the Devourers as if your pathetic species could offer anything of value in such a conflict. What could humans possibly bring to a war against beings that consume entire star systems?" She began to pace around the human delegation, her movements predatory and graceful. "I have studied your military records, Commander. Your ships are slow and clumsy. Your weapons are chemical-based projectiles that would barely scratch our ceremonial armor. Your soldiers require breathing apparatus to survive in most environments, and you die if you don't consume organic matter every few rotations." The princess stopped directly in front of Chen, looking down at him despite being only slightly taller. "Tell me, human, what makes you think the mighty Zephyrian Empire needs the help of such limited creatures?" Commander Chen met her gaze without flinching. "Because we've fought the Devourers before, Your Highness, and we've won." The laughter in the chamber died instantly. Lyrelei's four eyes widened in surprise before narrowing to dangerous slits. "Impossible," she hissed. "The Devourers have consumed 47 star systems in the past solar cycle alone. No species has successfully repelled them. The human colony of New Sparta held for 6 months against a full Devourer swarm." Chen continued, his voice steady. "We lost 70% of our population, but we drove them back. The colony of Thermopylae fell, but not before taking 3 Devourer bioships with it. Every human world they've attacked has made them pay in blood." Lyrelei laughed, but the sound held less certainty than before. Propaganda and lies. Even if these tales were true, what good is dying gloriously? The Zephyrian way is to win through superior technology and strategy, not through whatever primitive savagery you call warfare. She turned to address the court, her voice rising. "Look at him, nobles of Zephyr. This creature claims his species can help us fight the greatest threat our galaxy has ever known. Yet he carries weapons that fire metal pellets and wears armor that wouldn't stop a child's energy toy." The court's laughter returned, but several of the older nobles remained silent, their ancient eyes studying the human commander with newfound interest. Chen reached slowly into his uniform jacket, causing several Zephyrian guards to tense. He withdrew a small data crystal and placed it on the floor between himself and the princess. "Battle recordings from New Sparta," he said simply. "See for yourself what humans are capable of." Lyrelei gestured dismissively. "I have no interest in watching primitive beings throw themselves uselessly at superior foes." She turned away from the crystal. "Lord Vexhai, escort these humans back to their ship. Inform them that the Zephyrian Empire has no need for such enthusiastic suicide troops." As the guards moved forward, Chen spoke again. "We know about the attack on Zephyr Prime's outer defense grid last month. 3 Devourer scouts. Your forces destroyed them, but not before they transmitted detailed scans back to the swarm. They're coming for you next, Princess. And when they do, all the advanced technology in the galaxy won't matter if you don't understand how they think. The princess whirled around, her silver skin flushing with anger. How dare you speak of classified military intelligence? Where did you— We were there, Chen interrupted. Human ships tracked those scouts for 3 days before your sensors even detected them. We watched the battle. Your forces fought bravely, but they fought like they were facing a conventional enemy. The Devourers aren't conventional, Your Highness. They're something else entirely. The throne room fell silent except for the soft hum of the ambient lighting. Lyreley stood frozen, her forearms trembling slightly with rage and something else. Perhaps the first stirring of doubt. You're lying, she said, but her voice lacked its earlier conviction. Chen shook his head. The lead scout ship was damaged but not destroyed. It's been following your patrol routes for 2 weeks, learning your patterns. If your mother's spies are half as good as reputation suggests, she already knows this. The question is, will pride prevent you from accepting help when it's offered freely? The princess looked around the chamber, suddenly aware that the older nobles were watching her reaction carefully. She realized that this moment would define not just her response to the human offer, but her readiness to lead when the real threat arrived. The data crystal lay between them like a bridge across an impossible divide, waiting to reveal truths that might shatter everything Lyreley thought she knew about humanity's place in the galactic order. The data crystal hummed softly as it projected images into the air above the throne room floor. The holographic display showed the human colony of New Sparta from orbit, a modest collection of domed cities scattered across a rust-colored planet. The timestamp indicated the recording was only 3 months old. Princess Lyreley watched with growing confusion as the peaceful scene suddenly exploded into chaos. The sky above New Sparta darkened as something massive blotted out the star. The Devourer bioship descended like a diseased moon, its organic hull pulsing with veins of sickly green light. Smaller creatures began raining from its belly, the size of fighter craft but clearly alive, with wings that beat like those of some cosmic bat. Pause it, Commander Chen said quietly. The hologram froze mid-frame, showing dozens of the creatures diving toward the human cities. This is what everyone else sees when they face the Devourers. Terror weapons designed to paralyze defenders with fear. Most species surrender at this point. Lyreley's upper arms crossed over her chest while her lower hands remained clenched at her sides. Most species have the intelligence to recognize a hopeless situation. What did your people do? De-screaming? Chen touched the crystal again, and the recording resumed. What happened next made several court nobles gasp in surprise. Instead of panic, the human cities came alive with coordinated defensive fire. Simple projectile weapons, the same kind that had made Lyreley laugh earlier, began tracking the diving creatures with deadly precision. The primitive bullets found their mark again and again, sending the alien attackers spiraling out of control. Your weapons, whispered Lord Zactel from his floating seat. They're actually damaging the bioforms? Kinetic impact, Chen explained. The Devourers have adapted to energy weapons over millions of years of consumption. Their hides disperse heat and electromagnetic radiation like it was sunlight, but they never develop defenses against simple mass moving at high velocity. The recording continued, showing human soldiers pouring out of bunkers and defensive positions. They moved with grim determination rather than the terror that usually accompanied Devourer attacks. Lyreley watched one group of soldiers deliberately expose themselves to draw fire away from a damaged shelter full of civilians. Half of them died in the process, but their sacrifice allowed the evacuation to proceed. Madness, she breathed. They're throwing away their lives for no tactical advantage. Watch the next part, Chen said simply. The bioship's main weapon began charging, a massive organic cannon that gathered energy from the creature's entire body. Previous recordings from other worlds showed this weapon could crack open city-sized bunkers with a single shot, but as it prepared to fire, something unexpected happened. Human fighters emerged from hidden launch bays carved directly into the planet's surface. Not sleek energy-based craft like those used by most advanced species, but bulky chemical-fueled rockets that belched smoke and flame as they climbed toward the bioship. The Devourers' smaller creatures moved to intercept them, confident in their superiority. They were wrong. The human pilots flew their craft like guided missiles, using the same crude but effective kinetic weapons to punch through bioarmor that had previously seemed impenetrable. When their ammunition ran out, they didn't retreat. Instead, they rammed their fighters directly into vital areas of the bioship's hull. "They're committing suicide," Lord Vexhai observed, his voice tight with disbelief. "They're buying time," Chen corrected. "Watch." The bioship's charging cycle was disrupted by the kamikaze attacks. Its weapon powered down as the creature tried to deal with the unexpected damage. That brief window was all the humans needed. A coordinated barrage of ground-based missiles, again, simple kinetic weapons, slammed into the creature's exposed weapon cluster. The explosion that followed was visible from space. Princess Lyra Lee stared at the recording in stunned silence as the massive bioship began to fall. It crashed into an empty section of the planet's surface, creating a crater that would be visible for centuries. The smaller creatures, suddenly cut off from their hive mind connection, began attacking each other in confusion. "The colony survived," Chen said as the recording ended. "Barely. We lost 4 million people out of 6 million. Our infrastructure was destroyed. It took everything we had just to evacuate the survivors, but we proved something important that day." "What?" Lyra Lee's voice was barely above a whisper. "That the devourers can be hurt, they can be confused, and they can be killed." Chen looked directly at her. "Every species they've encountered before fought them like a conventional enemy. Energy weapons at long range, defensive strategies focused on superior technology. But the devourers evolved to counter those tactics millions of years ago." He gestured toward the fading hologram. "Humans fight differently. We don't rely on technology to win our battles. We rely on something else. Something the devourers haven't learned to consume." The throne room remained silent for long moments. Finally, one of the older nobles leaned forward in his floating seat. "What do you call this something else, human?" Chen smiled grimly. "Stubbornness, spite. The refusal to quit even when quitting is the logical choice. My species has a saying, rage against the dying of the light. We don't go quietly into the dark, Your Highness. We make the dark come and take us by force, and we make it pay for every inch." Lyra Lee felt something cold settling in her stomach. Not fear, but recognition. The tactical implications of what she had just seen were staggering. If humans could actually damage devourer bioships with primitive weapons, this recording could be fabricated, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "It could be," Chen agreed, "which is why we brought verification." He reached into his jacket again and produced a small vial filled with what looked like black liquid, biomatter from the crashed ship. "Your scientist can analyze it and confirm its authenticity. We also have the exact coordinates of New Sparta. Your long-range sensors can verify the crater." The princess stared at the vial as if it contained poison. In a way, it did. Poison to everything she thought she knew about galactic warfare and humanity's place in it. "Even if this is real," she said slowly, "it proves nothing except that humans are willing to die uselessly. One victory against a scout force doesn't mean you can stop a full swarm." "No," Chen admitted. "It doesn't, but it means we have a chance. And sometimes, Princess, a chance is all you need to change the course of history. The question is whether the Zephyrian Empire is willing to take that chance with us." The weight of decision pressed down on Lyra Lee's shoulders like a physical force. Around her, the court waited to see how their future empress would respond to this unprecedented challenge to their worldview. The tension in the throne room was broken by the soft chime of the communication system. A holographic display materialized near the throne, showing the face of Admiral Cassiandra, the Zephyrian Empire's most decorated military commander. Her expression was grim. "Your Highness," the Admiral's voice carried across the chamber. "I apologize for the interruption, but we have an urgent situation. Long-range sensors have detected a Devourer advance fleet, 12 bioships approaching from the Andorian sector." The court erupted in frightened whispers. Princess Lyra Lee felt her 4 hearts skip in unison. "How long until they reach the outer defense grid?" 6 rotations, possibly 5 if they maintain current velocity," Admiral Cassiandra replied. "We're mobilizing the 3rd and 5th fleets, but—" She paused, glancing at something off-screen. "Your Highness, there's something else." "Our scouts report these bioships are different from previous encounters. Larger, and they're accompanied by something we've never seen before." Commander Chen stepped forward. "Admiral, with your permission, what do the escort vessels look like?" Admiral Cassandra's eyes narrowed as she studied the human. You have no authority to— Answer him, Princess Lyrelai commanded, surprising herself with the decisiveness in her voice. They appear to be some kind of specialized breeding ships, the Admiral said reluctantly. Intelligence suggests they're designed to adapt and evolve bioforms during combat based on enemy resistance patterns. Chen's face went pale. Adapters. We've heard reports but never confirmed their existence. Princess, if those ships reach your core systems, they'll analyze your energy-based defenses and create counters within hours. Your entire fleet could become useless. The Admiral leaned forward. How could a human possibly know about classified Devourer variants? Because we've been tracking them longer than you think, Chen replied. Humans might be primitive by your standards, but we're very good at staying hidden and watching our enemies. We've observed 17 different Devourer fleet compositions over the past 2 years. This particular configuration, 12 bioships with adaptation support, has only appeared twice before. And? Lyrelai demanded. Both systems fell within 10 rotations. Total consumption. Chen's words hit the chamber like a physical blow, but both times the defenders used the same strategy your people favor. Energy weapons, defensive formations, technological superiority. They never had a chance. Admiral Cassandra's image flickered as she processed this information. Human, if your intelligence is accurate, then we need to evacuate the outer colonies immediately and fall back to— No, Chen interrupted. Running won't work. The adaptation ships learn from every encounter. If you retreat now, they'll just follow you to your core worlds with perfect knowledge of your capabilities. Your only chance is to hit them here before they can study your responses. With what? Lyrelai's voice cracked slightly. You've seen our military records. You know our capabilities. How can we possibly stop something that can adapt to our weapons in real time? Chen was quiet for a moment, his weathered face thoughtful. Then he looked directly at the princess. We can't, but we might be able to. The distinction wasn't lost on anyone in the chamber. Lord Zactel leaned forward urgently. Human, speak plainly. What are you proposing? A joint operation. Zephyrian forces engage the main fleet using standard energy-based tactics. Let the adaptation ships think they understand your capabilities. Meanwhile, human forces, using kinetic weapons the Devourers have never encountered, strike at the adaptation ships themselves. Admiral Cassandra shook her head. Impossible. Human ships are too slow to penetrate a Devourer formation. Your vessels would be destroyed before reaching effective range. Not if they were carried inside Zephyrian vessels, Chen said quietly. The suggestion hung in the air like a live explosive. Princess Lyrelai stared at the human commander as the implications sank in. You're talking about completely integrated tactics. Shared command structures. Zephyrian and human crews working together on the same ships. I'm talking about survival, Chen replied. Yours and ours. The Devourers aren't going to stop with your empire. They're moving systematically through this sector. If they break your defenses, human space is next. We can fight them separately and die separately, or we can fight them together and maybe live. The communication from Admiral Cassandra crackled with static as she consulted with her staff. When her image stabilized, her expression was troubled. Princess, I'm receiving tactical reports from the outer sensor networks. The human assessment appears accurate. These adaptation ships are already analyzing our standard patrol formations. They know we're here. How long do we have to decide? Lyrelai asked. 2 rotations, Chen said. After that, we need to begin deployment. Any later and we won't have time to coordinate our forces properly. Princess Lyrelai looked around the throne room, seeing her own fear reflected in the faces of the court nobles. These were beings who had lived their entire lives confident in Zephyrian superiority, secure in the knowledge that their technology could overcome any threat. Now they faced an enemy that turned that very technology against them. What exactly are you asking of us? She said finally. Trust, Chen replied simply. Trust that humans know how to fight this enemy. Trust that sometimes the primitive approach is the right approach, and trust that we'll stand with you even when the odds seem impossible. He paused, then added, In return, we're asking you to trust us with your lives, human tactics. They're not like yours. We don't try to minimize casualties or preserve equipment. When we fight to win, regardless of cost. Some of your people won't come home. The honesty of the statement was brutal but somehow reassuring. Lyrelai realized that Chen wasn't trying to manipulate her with promises of easy victory. He was offering exactly what he claimed, a chance purchased with blood and sacrifice. "Admiral," she said, turning back to the holographic display. "What is your tactical assessment of this proposal?" Admiral Cassandra was quiet for several long moments. "Unorthodox, risky, against all established protocols." Another pause. "But given the nature of this threat, it might be our only viable option. The human assessment of adaptation ship capabilities matches our worst-case projections." The princess closed her 4 eyes and tried to imagine explaining this decision to her mother, the Empress. Allying with humans had seemed impossible just an hour ago. Now she was contemplating integrated military operations with a species she had dismissed as primitive barbarians. When she opened her eyes, she found Commander Chen watching her with something that might have been sympathy. "I need to speak with my mother," she said. "The Empress must approve any alliance of this magnitude." "Of course," Chen nodded. "But Princess, don't take too long. Every hour we delay is an hour the adaptation ships use to study your defenses. And once they fully understand your capabilities—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Everyone in the chamber understood the implications of facing an enemy that could perfectly counter every weapon and tactic in the Zephyrian arsenal. The fate of 2 species now hung in the balance, waiting for the wisdom of an empress who had ruled the galaxy for 3 centuries but had never faced a threat like this. The private audience chamber deep within the palace was a place few beings had ever seen. Its walls were made of crystallized starlight, harvesting the energy of distant suns to create an environment of pure tranquility. Here, surrounded by the accumulated wisdom of centuries, Empress Valera held court with only her most trusted advisors. Princess Lyrelei knelt before her mother's floating throne, her 4 arms spread in the traditional gesture of supplication. The Empress was ancient even by Zephyrian standards, her silver skin bearing the intricate tattoos that marked each major victory of her 300-year reign. Her 8 eyes, a rare genetic trait among their people, seemed to see through time itself as she regarded her daughter. "Rise, child," the Empress said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Speak freely of this human proposal." Lyrelei stood and activated the holographic projector Chen had given her. The battle recordings from New Sparta played out in the sacred chamber, showing human defiance in the face of overwhelming odds. When the recording ended, the Empress remained silent for several long moments. "Fascinating," she said finally. "Show me the human leader's personnel files." A new display materialized in the air between them. Commander Marcus Chen's complete military history. Lyrelei watched her mother's expressions shift as she read through decades of service records, tactical assessments, and psychological evaluations. "He fought in the border wars," the Empress noted. "Led evacuations during the Titan mining disaster. Volunteered for the deep patrol missions in unexplored space." Her ancient eyes fixed on her daughter. "This is not the record of a barbarian, Lyrelei. This is the record of a soldier who understands duty. But mother, their technology is so primitive. Their weapons, their ships, are effective against an enemy that our advanced systems cannot touch," the Empress interrupted. "Tell me, daughter, what did you think of this human when you first met him?" Lyrelei felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I thought he was beneath notice, representative of an inferior species seeking help from their betters. And now," the princess was quiet for a moment, remembering Chen's calm demeanor in the face of her hostility. "I think I may have misjudged him. And his people." The Empress leaned forward on her throne. "Lyrelei, I have ruled this empire for 3 centuries. In that time I have seen species rise and fall, witnessed the birth of new civilizations and the death of ancient ones. Do you know what I have learned? No, mother. That survival is not about superiority. It is about adaptation." The Empress gestured toward the tactical displays still floating around them. "The Devourers consume advanced civilizations because they have learned to counter advanced tactics. They feast on our strengths and turn them into weaknesses." She stood from her throne, moving with the fluid grace that had made her legendary in her youth. "But they have never faced a species that finds strength in what others consider weakness. These humans, they may be exactly what we need." "You're considering the alliance?" Lyrelei asked, unable to hide her surprise. "I am considering survival," the Empress replied. "But there is something else you must know before we proceed. Something that will change how you view this human commander." The Empress activated a different holographic display, this one showing archived records from the palace's deepest vaults. The files were marked with the highest security classifications, accessible only to the royal family. 27 years ago, the Empress began, a human exploration vessel was attacked by pirates near our border. The crew was killed, but their ship's escape pod reached one of our outer colonies. Inside was a critically injured human female and her newborn infant daughter. Lyra stared at the medical records appearing in the holographic display. "Mother, why are you showing me this?" "Because the woman died from her injuries 3 days after arrival. But before she died, she made a request of the colonial governor. She asked that her daughter be raised as a Zephyrian, given every opportunity to serve the empire she had heard so much about." The medical files showed detailed biological scans of the human infant, but as Lyra studied them more closely, she noticed something impossible. The genetic markers, the cellular structure, it was wrong. This wasn't a pure human child, she was hybrid, Lyra whispered. "Human and Zephyrian," the Empress confirmed. "The product of a union that should have been impossible according to every biological law we knew. Yet there she was, alive and healthy, carrying the genetic heritage of both species." The holographic display shifted to show adoption records, educational files, military academy graduation ceremonies. The child had grown up on Zephyr Prime, trained in their finest institutions, served with distinction in the Imperial Guard. "That child became one of our most decorated soldiers," the Empress continued. "She showed remarkable tactical ability and an unusual talent for understanding alien psychology. She could think like species we had never encountered, predict their responses with uncanny accuracy." Lyra's 4 hearts were racing as pieces of the impossible puzzle began falling into place. What happened to her? She became the first Zephyrian human cultural exchange officer. Spent 15 years traveling between our territories, learning about both species, building the foundation for eventual diplomatic contact. The Empress smiled sadly. She fell in love with a human officer during one of those exchanges. A young commander named Marcus Chen. The throne room spun around Lyra as the full truth hit her. That's impossible, is it?" The Empress gestured and a new image appeared. A family photograph showing Chen with a silver-skinned woman who had familiar facial features. "Your mother was brilliant, daughter. She understood that our species would need to work together eventually. She just didn't live to see it happen." Lyra staggered backward, her mind reeling. "You're saying that Chen is—" "That I'm half-human," the Empress confirmed. "The daughter of 2 warriors who saw past the boundaries of species and chose love over prejudice. And now, by the cruel irony of fate, you must work with your father to save both your peoples." The princess looked down at her forearms, her silver skin, trying to reconcile this revelation with everything she thought she knew about herself. "Does he know?" "Not yet. Your mother asked me to wait until the time was right to reveal the truth. It seems the time has come." Through the chamber's crystal walls, alarms began sounding in the distance. Admiral Cassandra's voice echoed through the palace communication system. "All stations, this is Fleet Command. Devourer advanced scouts have been detected in the outer system. Estimated arrival of main force in 4 rotations." The Empress placed a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder. "You have 2 choices, Lyra. You can let this revelation paralyze you with confusion and doubt. Or you can use it as the Devourers use their evolution, as a strength that your enemies cannot counter." "What do you mean?" "You understand both species better than anyone alive. You have Zephyrian tactical training and human stubbornness in your blood. If anyone can make this alliance work, it is you." The Empress moved back to her throne. "I am authorizing the joint operation. You will serve as liaison between our forces and the human fleet. But Mother, I just learned that my entire life has been preparation for this moment." The Empress interrupted firmly. "Your mother knew this day would come. She died believing that her sacrifice would someday save both our peoples. Will you honor her memory by proving her right?" Outside, the alarms continued to sound as the Zephyrian fleet prepared for the greatest battle in their history. And somewhere in the galaxy, Commander Marcus Chen was about to learn that the war for survival would be fought alongside his own daughter. The main command center of the Zephyrian flagship Eternal Vigilance hummed with barely controlled energy as representatives from both species worked side by side for the first time in galactic history. Holographic displays showed the approaching Devourer fleet in terrifying detail. 12 massive bioships that dwarfed anything in either human or Zephyrian arsenals. their organic hulls pulsing with malevolent life. Commander Chen stood before the central tactical display, his weathered face illuminated by the ghostly blue light of the projection. Around him, Zephyrian officers moved with practiced efficiency, their forearms allowing them to manipulate multiple control interfaces simultaneously. The integration of the two command structures had gone more smoothly than anyone expected, though tension still crackled beneath the surface. "Admiral Cassandra," Chen said, pointing to one of the escort vessels surrounding the main Devourer formation. "Your intelligence was correct. Those are definitely adaptation ships. We're seeing biomechanical modifications in real time as they analyze your outer defense platforms." The Zephyrian admiral nodded grimly. "Our energy signatures are being cataloged and processed. They'll have countermeasures ready before we even engage." She turned to study the human commander. "Are you certain your kinetic weapons will be effective against them?" "As certain as we can be without direct testing," Chen replied. "But we'll only get one chance. If the adaptation ships survive the initial strike, they'll create defenses against our projectiles just like they do with energy weapons." The command center doors hissed open, and Princess Lyrelei entered accompanied by her personal guard. She had spent the past rotation in intensive briefings with both military commands, learning the intricate details of the joint operation. But the knowledge of her parentage weighed heavily on her mind, affecting every interaction with the human commander. "Status report," she requested, her voice carefully neutral. "Devourer fleet will reach engagement range in 2 rotations," Admiral Cassandra reported. "Combined fleet is positioned according to the agreed battle plan. Zephyrian vessels will begin the engagement phase while human strike teams prepare for torpedo runs against the adaptation ships." Chen glanced at the princess, noting the tension in her posture. Throughout their planning sessions, he had sensed something different about her, a depth of understanding of human tactics that seemed unusual for someone who had claimed to know nothing about his species. "Your Highness," he said formally, "have you had a chance to review the final targeting priorities?" "Yes," Lyrelei replied, moving to stand beside him at the tactical display. The proximity made her nervous in ways she couldn't fully understand. "I have concerns about the timing of the human torpedo strikes. Your pilots will be exposed for nearly 30 seconds during their attack runs." "It's necessary," Chen explained. "Our kinetic warheads need to achieve specific velocities to penetrate the bioarmor. Any faster and they'll burn up on impact. Any slower and they won't cause sufficient damage." 30 seconds is an eternity in combat," Lyrelei insisted. "The Devourers will have time to intercept your fighters." Chen smiled grimly. "That's why we're not using fighters. We're using volunteers." The explanation sent a chill through the Zephyrian officers. Admiral Cassandra leaned forward. "Volunteers for what?" "Modified torpedo casings large enough for a single pilot," Chen said simply. "Human-guided kinetic weapons. We call them riding the lightning." The concept was so alien to Zephyrian military thinking that several officers required translation through their neural interfaces. The idea of deliberately placing pilots inside weapons designed to impact enemy vessels was beyond their comprehension. "That's suicide," Lyrelei breathed. "That's war," Chen corrected. "Human war. Sometimes the only way to guarantee a hit is to guide the weapon personally. Our pilots understand the risks." Through the communication system, a new voice crackled to life. Captain Sarah Mitchell of the human destroyer Indomitable. "Command, this is Strike Leader Mitchell. Torpedo Squadron is ready for deployment. We have 18 volunteers for guided impacts against adaptation ship targets." Chen activated his communicator. "Acknowledged, Strike Leader. Final briefing begins in 30 minutes. As the communication ended, Lyrelei stared at the tactical display with new understanding. The small icons representing human vessels suddenly seemed impossibly brave rather than primitively equipped. These people were preparing to sacrifice themselves to save species they barely knew. "Commander," she said quietly, "may I speak with you privately?" Chen glanced at Admiral Cassandra, who nodded permission. The two moved to a smaller briefing room adjacent to the main command center. When the doors closed behind them, Lyrelei found herself struggling to find words. "There's something I need to tell you," she began, then stopped. How did one explain that everything about their interaction had been based on lies? "Your Highness, if this is about doubts regarding the operation, it's about my mother," Lyrelei interrupted. "My real mother," Chen frowned, clearly confused by the sudden change of subject. I don't understand. Her name was Elena Chenvastor. She was a cultural exchange officer, and she was married to a human commander named Marcus Chen. The words hit Chen like a physical blow. He staggered backward, his face going pale as memories flooded back. Elena. But she died in the border territories. Pirates attacked her transport. The wreckage was never found. She made it to a Zephyrian colony. Lyrelai continued, tears forming in her 4 eyes.
She was pregnant.
She lived long enough to give birth, to ask that her daughter be raised as a Zephyrian citizen. Chen stared at her, seeing for the first time the human features hidden beneath her alien appearance. The shape of her eyes, the curve of her jaw, the way she held her head when concentrating, all echoes of the woman he had loved and lost 27 years ago. He couldn't finish the sentence. Your daughter, Lyrelai confirmed. And Elena's. The Empress told me yesterday, just before authorizing this alliance. I've spent my entire life believing I was pure Zephyrian, raised to think of humans as inferior. But now, Chen moved closer, his weathered hands reaching toward her face before stopping uncertainly.
May I?
She nodded, and he gently touched her cheek. The silver skin was warm, familiar in a way that transcended species barriers. You have her intelligence, he said softly. Her courage. I can see it in how you've handled the situation, questioning assumptions, looking for truth beneath appearances. I mocked you, Lyrelai said, shame coloring her voice. Called your people primitive, laughed at your weapons. You were raised to believe those things, Chen replied. Elena would understand. She spent years bridging the gap between our cultures. She would be proud of what you've become. An alarm echoed through the ship, indicating final preparations for battle. Chen straightened, the commander reasserting itself over the father. We need to return to the command center, he said. The operation depends on perfect timing. Wait, Lyrelai caught his arm. Those pilots who are volunteering for the guided torpedo strikes. Do they know it's suicide? Chen nodded. They know. And they're doing it anyway. Because that's what humans do. We protect our family no matter the cost. He paused at the door, looking back at her. That includes our adopted family. Elena believed our species could work together. Today, we honor her memory by proving her right. As they returned to the command center, both father and daughter carried the weight of revelation alongside their military responsibilities. Outside the ship, the Devourer fleet continued its inexorable advance, unaware that they were about to face something unprecedented in their millions of years of conquest. The combined fury of two species united not by technology or treaty, but by the bonds of sacrifice and love. The combined fleet moved toward the Devourer superorganism like a school of fish swimming into the jaws of a cosmic leviathan. Princess Lyrelai's personal fighter, the Silver Arrow, streaked through space alongside Commander Chen's modified transport, both vessels pushing their engines beyond safe limits. Around them, human and Zephyrian ships of every size and class had formed the most desperate attack formation in galactic military history. Final approach in 60 seconds, Chen's voice crackled through the communication system. All vessels confirm ramming trajectories. One by one, ship captains reported their readiness to die for their combined peoples. The superorganism ahead of them pulsed with malevolent energy, its bioelectric weapon charging to levels that could crack a planet's crust. The organic cables connecting the individual bioships created a web of vulnerable points, but only if the attacking vessels could survive long enough to reach them. 30 seconds, Admiral Cassandra announced from the Eternal Vigilance. The flagship would coordinate the attack but wouldn't participate directly. Someone had to survive to command any remaining forces. Lyrelai checked her fighter systems one final time. The Silver Arrow had been stripped of everything except engines, shields, and a reinforced prow designed for a single catastrophic impact. Through her cockpit window, she could see Chen's transport keeping pace beside her, its human pilot visible through the transparent aluminum viewport. Lyrelai, Chen's private communication channel activated. I want you to know Elena would be proud of you. Proud of what you've become, proud of your courage. I learned it from both my parents, she replied. Human stubbornness and Zephyrian determination. The Devourers never stood a chance. The superorganism's weapon began to glow with terrible intensity. Energy readings showed it would fire in less than 20 seconds, well before the ramming attack could reach its targets. All ships, emergency acceleration, Chen commanded. Maximum speed, damn the consequences. The attack fleet surged forward as every vessel pushed past their safety limits. Engines overloaded and exploded, but their ships continued forward on momentum alone. Several craft broke apart under the stress, but their crews used escape pods as additional ramming projectiles. 10 seconds to weapon discharge, Admiral Cassandra warned. That's when Lyrelai made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. Instead of maintaining her assigned trajectory toward a connection cable, she veered directly toward the superorganism's central weapon cluster. "Princess, what are you doing?" Chen shouted over the communication system. "Something my mother would have done," Lyrelai replied calmly. "Something human." The silver arrow dove straight into the path of the bioelectric weapon just as it began to fire. The massive energy discharge intended to destroy Zephyr Prime struck Lyrelai's fighter instead. The impact should have vaporized the small craft instantly. Instead, something impossible happened. The princess's hybrid physiology, human neural patterns combined with Zephyrian bioelectric sensitivity, created a feedback loop that the Devourers had never encountered. Instead of being destroyed by the weapon's energy, Lyrelai absorbed it, channeled it through her unique biology, and redirected it back into the superorganism's own neural network. The effect was catastrophic. The shared consciousness that linked the bioships together suddenly found itself invaded by an alien thought pattern it couldn't process or adapt to. Human concepts like self-sacrifice and protective love were so antithetical to Devourer psychology that they caused a cascade failure throughout the entire network. "Connection cables are severing," Admiral Cassandra reported with amazement. "The superorganism is breaking apart." The ramming attack struck the separated bioships with devastating effect. Without their shared defenses, the Devourer vessels crumpled under the coordinated assault. Chen's transport punched completely through its target, emerging from the other side in a shower of biomechanical debris. But it was Lyrelai's seemingly impossible survival that turned the battle into a rout. The silver arrow emerged from the weapon discharge glowing with absorbed energy. Its pilot somehow unharmed but fundamentally changed. The bioelectric feedback had created a permanent link between her consciousness and the Devourer neural network. "I can hear them," she reported, her voice filled with wonder and horror. "I can hear their thoughts, their plans. They're afraid." For the first time in millions of years, the Devourers are experiencing fear. Through her connection, Lyrelai transmitted that fear back to the surviving bioships. The sensation of terror, completely foreign to creatures that had spent eons as apex predators, caused them to flee in panic. The remaining Devourer forces scattered to the far reaches of space, carrying with them a message that would spread throughout their species. Humanity and its allies were not prey. They were something else entirely. The battle was over, but its consequences would reshape the galaxy. In the days that followed, as the combined fleets returned to Zephyr Prime for repairs and celebration, the true significance of what had occurred became clear. The alliance between humans and Zephyrians had proven that different species could unite against common threats. But more than that, it had shown that their differences could become sources of strength rather than division. Princess Lyrelai, now forever changed by her experience, became the first ambassador of a new age. Her unique perspective allowed her to communicate with species that had previously been considered incompatible with galactic civilization. Under her guidance, the Human-Zephyrian alliance expanded to include dozens of other races, all united by the principle that diversity was not weakness but power. Commander Chen retired from active military service but remained as an advisor to the new Galactic Defense Force. He spent his remaining years working alongside his daughter to build the peaceful future that Elena had dreamed of, a galaxy where species differences were celebrated rather than feared. The Devourers, humbled by their first real defeat, eventually sought negotiations rather than conquest. It turned out that their millions of years of consuming other civilizations had been driven by a desperate search for something they had lost long ago: the capacity for growth and change. Through carefully mediated contact with species that embodied those qualities, they began to remember what they had once been before becoming destroyers. And in the palace archives on Zephyr Prime, a new entry was added to the historical records. It spoke of the day when a human soldier and an alien princess discovered that family bonds could transcend species barriers, and that love, whether between individuals or entire civilizations, remained the most powerful force in the universe. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Sometimes the most unlikely alliances produce the most extraordinary victories, and sometimes the answer to an impossible problem is not to fight it with superior force, but to embrace it with superior heart. Years later, when young beings of countless species learned about the Battle of Zephyr Prime in their history classes, they would hear about the day when humanity taught the galaxy a simple but profound truth, that the strength to protect those you love can overcome any technology, any strategy, and any enemy. The age of the Devourer was over. The age of cooperation had begun. The combined fleet moved toward the Devourer superorganism like a school of fish swimming into the jaws of a cosmic leviathan. Princess Lyrelai's personal fighter, the Silver Arrow, streaked through space alongside Commander Chen's modified transport, both vessels pushing their engines beyond safe limits. Around them, human and Zephyrian ships of every size and class had formed the most desperate attack formation in galactic military history. Final approach in 60 seconds, Chen's voice crackled through the communication system. All vessels confirm ramming trajectories. One by one, ship captains reported their readiness to die for their combined peoples. The superorganism ahead of them pulsed with malevolent energy, its bioelectric weapon charging to levels that could crack a planet's crust. The organic cables connecting the individual bioships created a web of vulnerable points, but only if the attacking vessels could survive long enough to reach them. 30 seconds, Admiral Cassandra announced from the Eternal Vigilance. The flagship would coordinate the attack but wouldn't participate directly. Someone had to survive to command any remaining forces. Lyrelai checked her fighter systems one final time. The Silver Arrow had been stripped of everything except engines, shields, and a reinforced prow designed for a single catastrophic impact. Through her cockpit window, she could see Chen's transport keeping pace beside her, its human pilot visible through the transparent aluminum viewport. Lyrelai, Chen's private communication channel activated. I want you to know Elena would be proud of you. Proud of what you've become, proud of your courage. I learned it from both my parents, she replied. Human stubbornness and Zephyrian determination. The Devourers never stood a chance. The superorganism's weapon began to glow with terrible intensity. Energy readings showed it would fire in less than 20 seconds, well before the ramming attack could reach its targets. All ships, emergency acceleration, Chen commanded. Maximum speed, damn the consequences. The attack fleet surged forward as every vessel pushed past their safety limits. Engines overloaded and exploded, but their ships continued forward on momentum alone. Several craft broke apart under the stress, but their crews used escape pods as additional ramming projectiles. 10 seconds to weapon discharge, Admiral Cassandra warned. That's when Lyrelai made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. Instead of maintaining her assigned trajectory toward a connection cable, she veered directly toward the superorganism's central weapon cluster. Princess, what are you doing? Chen shouted over the communication system. Something my mother would have done, Lyrelai replied calmly. Something human. The Silver Arrow dove straight into the path of the bioelectric weapon just as it began to fire. The massive energy discharge intended to destroy Zephyr Prime struck Lyrelai's fighter instead. The impact should have vaporized the small craft instantly. Instead, something impossible happened. The princess's hybrid physiology, human neural patterns combined with Zephyrian bioelectric sensitivity, created a feedback loop that the Devourers had never encountered. Instead of being destroyed by the weapon's energy, Lyrelai absorbed it, channeled it through her unique biology, and redirected it back into the superorganism's own neural network. The effect was catastrophic. The shared consciousness that linked the bioships together suddenly found itself invaded by an alien thought pattern it couldn't process or adapt to. Human concepts like self-sacrifice and protective love were so antithetical to Devourer psychology that they caused a cascade failure throughout the entire network. Connection cables are severing, Admiral Cassandra reported with amazement. The superorganism is breaking apart. The ramming attack struck the separated bioships with devastating effect. Without their shared defenses, the Devourer vessels crumpled under the coordinated assault. Chen's transport punched completely through its target, emerging from the other side in a shower of biomechanical debris. But it was Lyra Lay's seemingly impossible survival that turned the battle into a rout. The silver arrow emerged from the weapon discharge glowing with absorbed energy. Its pilot somehow unharmed but fundamentally changed. The bioelectric feedback had created a permanent link between her consciousness and the Devourer neural network. "I can hear them," she reported, her voice filled with wonder and horror. "I can hear their thoughts, their plans. They're afraid." For the first time in millions of years, the Devourers are experiencing fear. Through her connection, Lyra Lay transmitted that fear back to the surviving bioships. The sensation of terror, completely foreign to creatures that had spent eons as apex predators, caused them to flee in panic. The remaining Devourer forces scattered to the far reaches of space, carrying with them a message that would spread throughout their species. Humanity and its allies were not prey. They were something else entirely. The battle was over, but its consequences would reshape the galaxy. In the days that followed, as the combined fleets returned to Zephyr Prime for repairs and celebration, the true significance of what had occurred became clear. The alliance between humans and Zephyrians had proven that different species could unite against common threats. But more than that, it had shown that their differences could become sources of strength rather than division. Princess Lyra Lay, now forever changed by her experience, became the first ambassador of a new age. Her unique perspective allowed her to communicate with species that had previously been considered incompatible with galactic civilization. Under her guidance, the Human-Zephyrian alliance expanded to include dozens of other races, all united by the principle that diversity was not weakness but power. Commander Chen retired from active military service but remained as an advisor to the new Galactic Defense Force. He spent his remaining years working alongside his daughter to build the peaceful future that Elena had dreamed of, a galaxy where species differences were celebrated rather than feared. The Devourers, humbled by their first real defeat, eventually sought negotiations rather than conquest. It turned out that their millions of years of consuming other civilizations had been driven by a desperate search for something they had lost long ago: the capacity for growth and change. Through carefully mediated contact with species that embodied those qualities, they began to remember what they had once been before becoming destroyers. And in the palace archives on Zephyr Prime, a new entry was added to the historical records. It spoke of the day when a human soldier and an alien princess discovered that family bonds could transcend species barriers, and that love, whether between individuals or entire civilizations, remained the most powerful force in the universe. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Sometimes the most unlikely alliances produce the most extraordinary victories, and sometimes the answer to an impossible problem is not to fight it with superior force, but to embrace it with superior heart. Years later, when young beings of countless species learned about the Battle of Zephyr Prime in their history classes, they would hear about the day when humanity taught the galaxy a simple but profound truth: that the strength to protect those you love can overcome any technology, any strategy, and any enemy. The age of the Devourer was over. The age of cooperation had begun,